Welcome back to CodingCat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Here is Alex Patterson and Brittany Postma. This episode brought to you by Storyblok. Build anything and publish everywhere. Oh my gosh, it feels like it's been a minute, Brittany.
It's been a long minute, and I missed the music.
I think I've done a couple pods without you, but like you've been on vacation. I've been, I don't know, stuck in a hole somewhere. I don't know what's going on.
I feel like it's been at least a month, so it's been a while,
Yeah.
and it's good to be
That's
back.
ridiculous, right? A month? Like,
Yeah.
that's hard to believe. I feel like most of the time we talk like every other day.
Yeah.
It's been crazy. So today we're gonna talk about Angular 16, but first we want to get to know our guest a little bit, and I'm gonna call him Pato. Pato, do you want to say your full name and kind of a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so basically I have a rule. If you don't like me, you call me by my name. If you like me, you call me Pato. So my actual name is Patricio, which is like Patrick. But I go by Pato since I was a little baby. Pato means duck, like quack quack. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm Mexican, and in Mexico, if your name is Patricio, they call you Pato. So it's sort of like if your name is Michael, they call you Mike, pretty much.
Yeah.
Nice. My son just got back from Costa Rica, and he was explaining to me all of the like nicknames and like nuances he picked up. And he's like, "I love their swear words." And I was like, "Oh, good. Glad you learned that."
That's funny. Yeah, that's usually what people learn first.
Yep.
Yeah, those kids, like even in school, you can hear them talking, and it's like, "Oh, it's so bad." And like they're 14-year-olds. Like everyone has to push the boundaries.
Teenagers, they think it's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
How old is your son?
He's 14. Yeah, he's starting high school this year, and he is in the marching band, which is interesting and new. Like I grew up playing sports, and like that was my jam. And he's doing like 8-hour a day marching band, like they're national level like marching.
Wow.
And so it's like bring a gallon of water because you're gonna need it. It's intense. So I think
they do like before school and after school training, or
so he's actually out for the summer, and they do like summer like long sessions. It's not
2
every day.
days, but it's
It's well, I did football. It was like 2-a-days, right? But I don't think they're doing up downs and jumping jacks or anything like that. So
maybe they do with the drums, like they up down with the drums.
I don't know that as clarinet counts, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways. So yeah, that's what summer has started like for me. It's been interesting for sure. And Brittany, you know, you're out cruising, just hanging out, right?
I was, yeah, that was the vacation. We did a cruise in the Southern Caribbean, just absolutely gorgeous. I would love to just go back and spend some time down there because it was beautiful. And then came back to Michigan, and the weather was just awful for a minute here. It was like cold again. I don't know what happened. My mom visits, and she brings cold weather somehow from Alabama.
Tell her to stay home. Stop it.
Yeah, I'm like, she did that at Christmas. I think she brought the snow. Like we had the worst snow like when she came, and so yeah, it was cold. And then now it's finally nice again, but.
My wife just went down to see her mom in South Carolina, and I'm like, you picked like the most beautiful week to leave. I don't know why.
And then Brittany's mom came.
Yeah,
yeah.
Flip-flop.
Yep.
We need to switch it.
Yeah.
So Pato, we need to get to know you more. I see you around Angular all of the time. How the heck did you get started in Angular? Like, how did you get into web development to start with?
So I'm 31, and I've been writing code for like 15 years. I started pretty young. Learning on YouTube when YouTube was like super basic. I started with Visual Basic 6.0. That was my thing. And then back in my high school in Mexico, when you were in the senior year, it was a requirement for you to learn how to code websites.
Wow,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a requirement. And then it was like very heavy engineering focused, which I thought it was like cool because I love that. And then I got a full ride to go to school here in the US. So I got a computer science degree, and oh no, before that, I was in university in Mexico. I was studying nanotechnology, and we were programming genes. And I knew that I loved programming, but I didn't like chemistry.
Oh, okay.
Probably there's something out there that I can just do programming full time instead of having to play with chemistry. So that's when I got transferred to the US, and how I jump into Angular. So my first job after college, it was a company called CSX, and it's a huge enterprise company. They basically is the biggest train company on the east side of the nation, um, and they were trying to adopt Angular JS. But their infosec system team is like very, very hardcore, and it took them 2 years to approve Angular JS to be adopted inside of the company. At
Wow.
that point, Angular came out. So it took them like another 6 months to approve Angular. So that's when I fell in love with Angular. And then I left that job and started doing software engineering for a consultancy. And then
I feel like I'm like making you give us your resume. I'm sorry.
yeah, and then it's fine. And then I was organizing meetups and writing blog posts and things like that. And that's when the Angular GD came up, and I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'm an expert on whatever. And yeah,
You talk about something long enough, you become an expert. That's right.
yeah, but like honestly, like I hate the title expert. I feel like there's always someone like way better, and I'm just like learning all the time. But yeah, that's how I got started with web development and Angular.
Nice. That's a really cool story. So at some point in there, so you're like University of Mexico, Mexico
Yeah.
City area. When did you actually end up back in the US, or when did you come to the US?
12 years ago.
Oh wow,
It's been a while,
You've been
yeah.
here a while. Nice. I
Yeah,
have to ask, as a very pale Northern Michigan American, would you recommend Mexico City to go for like a vacation?
yeah, 100%. Like, there's this guy Matt from the Amplify team at AWS who just got back from Mexico City, and he loves it.
Everyone I hear, like I talk to, they've been to Mexico City. It feels like in the last 5 years, and
It's
they're
like
like,
super
the
cool to go
food's
to.
amazing. Like, go experience it all. And I'm always like, I keep hearing about cartels and like scariness in Mexico. What's
No,
going
that's in
on?
the north. Like honestly, like that's
Just
in the
stay
north.
away
There's
from the
only-
border.
Like
You're
go
good.
to Tijuana, which I don't even go there. There's no point for me to go there, and that's pretty much about it. Like I'm
Nice.
from the very center of Mexico. My city, it's called Leon or Lion. That's what it means,
Okay.
and it had like 2.5, 3 million people, and I have never seen anything crazy happening. But if I go to the subway here in New York City, I have seen like crazy stuff.
I know. Like, look
Yeah,
around
so
here. You
so
see,
define dangerous, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. They keep talking about like all these, like the Playa del Carmen area, and like where all the kids go for spring break, like
Cancun.
Cancun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
they're like, there's so many issues over there. I'm like, really? Like people
I
keep
feel like
going.
the danger is everywhere. It's just where you go,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
if I cross 135th Street in Manhattan, maybe it's not as safe as it should, you know. So
Yeah. You just have to know your area. Nice.
yeah, your areas, yeah.
That's really so. When you ended up graduating, did you end up with just like a programming degree, not this chemistry, like the chemistry thing? You're
I
like,
threw that away. That semester of college just like
good for
threw it
you.
away pretty
That's
much.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, they count some credits as certain electives, which that was cool. But I changed my major completely. Yeah.
That's really cool. When I went to school, I started out, I wanted to be a civil engineer, and I took Java. I had taken like C++ and C Sharp and never really got into it. And then I took Java, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And so
Nice.
kind of sent me down a different path there.
Did you have to
But
do MATLAB or no?
say that again?
Did you have to do MATLAB or that wasn't a thing maybe back in the days?
I don't think so.
It's
Not
like
that
this programming
I'm
tool
old.
that most
Like
of the
it
engineers
might
have
have.
nowadays.
Yeah. Nice. Well, cool. We're going to take a quick break, and then Pato is going to tell us all about Angular 16 and maybe show us some tips and tricks. We'll be right back.
How in the world could I forget about this?
There's no need to freak out. We have Storyblok.
Robert, you're right.
But we still need a plan.
Okay, how much time do we have left until the launch?
24 hours.
Okay, let's go.
We are ready to publish.
So let's get this baby online.
Let's get this baby online. I see.
I just want to use a Storyblok now.
I know. I can't not say it after that. It's funny. At one point that we switched versions of their commercial that they have essentially, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna really miss their old one. The new one has really like captured me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Like the production quality was like really nice.
So try Storyblok with Angular.
Yeah, I know, right? I saw the Angular logo in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Storyblok, once again. Okay, let's break it down. There's this massive blog post out there. I'm gonna just kind of bring that up, and you can take with it, wherever you want. Helps if I would have shared my screen. One moment. There we go. So this is a crazy long blog from the official blog, which I can't believe they're still running this on Medium, by the way. They really need to get out of there.
Like looking at that small print, I thought that said Mishko at first. I'm like, wait, Mishko doesn't.
It's a really small world too, because I believe that Mishko Every, however, something. He created Angular. I used to work with him at Builder.io. The CEO of Builder.io, I believe, is good friends with Minko, and they have lunch together. So it's a very small world out there. We're all kind of, like 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon, I think.
I could be wrong, but I think Builder.io has something to do with Quick.
Yes, that's it.
And the creator of Quick was the inventor of Angular.
Yes,
yep, you got it, man.
Yep.
I feel like Pato knows this. So yeah, there's a couple like really big standouts, and oh my gosh, I always forget his name. What's his name? He's everywhere with Angular. Mark. Thank you.
Great dancer, by the way.
He is a great dancer.
I met him at the Google I/O in Miami, and he was just like showing off his moves. I said, "Whoa, dude!" Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
He was Mark here, just so everyone knows. He is probably one of the biggest voices on the Angular side. He works for Google. He was just at the Miami meetup that I was at last month. Those guys get around. They're everywhere. It's crazy. So this is kind of the big thing, like this rethinking reactivity. The big part here is signals. Can you tell us?
Rethinking reactivity was the big title of Rich Harris's talk from a few years ago.
I mean, we just share these things, right?
Whoa.
React's been talking about reactivity for years.
Yeah, I guess we're just sharing these titles here.
So for folks who have probably written Angular for years, the RxJS side of Angular, I mean, it's been basically like ingrained in everyone that writes it, right? There's this new thing coming called Angular Signals. Can you break that down for us a little more? And I won't leave this up. It's not a quiz.
So basically, Angular Signals are here to replace Zone.js, right? They make your application more reactive and more performant, right? Because it takes less computations on the DOM, right? And the less computations, then that means the performance is going to be better for your web application. They also use, whenever you are using Signals, you have more control over the change detection of your application, which that was handled by Zone.js back in the days. I mean, you can still use Zone.js now, but now the point is for you to use signals. And signals are not here to replace RxJS, FYI. That's a big thing. Like you actually, it's pretty funny because you can go back and forward. You can convert signals to observables and observables to signals.
I think you used the interrupt for that, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. They're making them very friendly with each other. Like, yeah.
That's really cool. So Zone.js will be completely removed, or it's like, are we thinking in 17 it'll be gone? Is it gone already? How's that work?
If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, like the whole point is for you to just be away from it, but you can enable it if you want.
Gotcha.
Like you can definitely go to the main.ts configuration, if I'm not mistaken, and enable that.
That makes sense. So for Brittany, for you, I don't think you've ever written Angular, right?
I have not. No.
So the worst thing ever was Zone.js, in my opinion. Like it was so terrible. And anytime you got out of the context of like Zone.js, you had to like do all these loops and like jump out into this other like area. It was such a pain and such a mess. And people have been complaining about it probably nearly since day one. It's been horrible. So this is such a huge change. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's super nice because like whenever you use signals, you like if you come from like React background, like now that I'm writing Angular, I feel like I'm writing a little bit of React. It's pretty funny.
I think they're all
React doesn't use signals.
Yeah.
It's just like the way they structure the way you work with the code. It just makes it feel like very reacty or whatever.
That's kind of like where my next question is going. So signals are something that we heard of from Solid before, and what Ryan Carniato kind of came up with a couple of years ago. Is that and what Solid uses kind of what Angular built that on? Is it that technology, or is it something different?
They build it from scratch. They of course they could have adopted whatever Signal uses, but I know they build their own system of signals from scratch. But I think the core concept is essentially the same.
Yeah. I think Quick might use some kind of like hook or signal or call it something different too. They all kind of use something like similar to that.
Yeah. I don't know how they call it, but for me on Angular, it makes a lot of sense, the name, right? So signal. So basically, a signal is essentially a variable or a type of a variable that holds a value.
Yeah.
And whenever something changes, it has like a notification giving a signal for the framework to detect the change, right? So when I was learning about it, I'm like, oh my God, the name makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
Nice. The next big one, and I will put this on the screen again because it's clearly laid out, hydration. So with all the other meta frameworks, especially like Next.js and the React world, became super, super easy to go from server side or statically generated and just like pick and choose. Same with SvelteKit. Like everyone's kind of on this side, and Angular for years has always like they've had universal, but it's like been such a struggle to implement and like work through. But they claim like this is the next iteration. Have you gotten to play with this yet, Pato?
I don't, but I know people that have used it, and if I'm not mistaken, it helped increase their core web vitals by 45% in like basic applications. So that's like impressive. That was like really good. And it's very easy to integrate into existing apps, and they have incremental adoption. So you can use something that is called ng skip hydration to adapt it into the attributes in the components. So that's going to help do the performance of the DOM manipulation.
Yeah, I think it's still like this area that Angular needs to focus on, because the other meta frameworks, I feel like this is solved, and maybe they don't care that much because Angular typically is like an application-based thing and not a site-based thing. So
yeah,
not necessarily the rendering, though, right? That's the hydration after the rendering.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're saying that's still coming from the server and then hydrating on the client. So they're not providing like a static option.
There is still a static. Well, I should be careful with that too. So there's this thing called Scully. Yeah.
Yeah, Stoli
that's,
does.
that's also like that's more of a statically set up way, but
But you
like I
have to
said,
go
there's
like separate.
yeah, you almost need to use like what's I'm totally blanking. It feels like a Friday all of a sudden. What's the islands framework, meta framework?
Astro.
Astro. So it feels like you almost need to
Brittany
use like,
got all your answers.
Brittany knows everything. Like I'm always like fumbling around. She's like, I know all the words.
I don't
Um,
anymore. When I was at Netlify, I had to be like up on all that. I don't need all that stuff.
I feel like on like the story behind that, like using Astro and then like plugging in Angular or something like that, still has to be the case. It's weird that all of these other like for me writing a React application nowadays, like you write a Next application, you don't like mess around. To write Svelte, you write it with Svelte. Like it's just so much easier. And I think like you're starting to see that with Angular, but they don't have the story behind like all of the correct APIs and like the functions and serverless all built in, and it feels like they got out in the lead and they were ahead and like it was messy and good, and then all of a sudden like everyone else caught up and passed them. It's still such a weird thing, but that's just me. I don't write Angular every day like I used to.
I actually I met Jessica Janiak last year at Jamstack and talked to her a little bit about it. And they've been like talking to the community a lot and trying to like rebuild some of that like trust and stuff that they had in the beginning and like find out what the community needs and build some of that back. So maybe they're trying to get some of that integrated in what the community's asking for. So
yeah, 100%. I feel like since like Angular 12, they started focusing Angular on what the community wants more than what Google needs, because at the end of the day, the entire Google ecosystem is built on top of Angular software, right? So, but now they're actually involving the community. They're listening to them. What do they want? What do they need? And I feel like since Angular 12, they have done an impressive improvement. Yeah, it's super nice. Now, Angular 16 is probably the biggest release that they have made since Angular came out. Yeah.
I question that sometimes too, if it's all built on Angular because of how many secret frameworks they have at Google.
Yeah.
Like Wiz and like some of the other ones that they have internally there that I've heard of.
Yeah, that's a good call. Something interesting too. I'm not trying to call anyone a liar or something like that, but I was always told that Google lives in a monorepo. Everything that every single software at Google lives in a monorepo, every app. And then talking to some of my friends at Google, they were like, "No, that's not true."
I can't imagine that's true with how many things they have and like how many things die at Google like continually. Like, I can't see that.
Yeah, I feel like they just have like weekend projects and and then it's something impressive and then they just have. Like,
speaking of Google domains dying, like God,
that too.
So sad.
So sad.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, there's all these offers kind of coming out now, and it's like there's such nice integration for everything I have.
To tell me why Squarespace is bad. Like, I don't know if I don't know. Anyways, we're talking about Angular, and I'm going on tangents, but I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's hard not to talk about the company that basically runs
the show.
Yeah.
So I think bringing it back a little bit, the new build that's being used as well is Vite under the hood. So there you go.
Super cool. Yeah. So basically, Vite, if I'm not mistaken, is invented by even you. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And now you can use Vite for for ng-serve, if you're not familiar with Angular, basically is what runs your application. Is the same as in React, npm start, or whatever. So now is using that on dev mode, which I think is really cool. And also on the build side, they're using ES build, and it's basically building your application in development and prod, which is super nice.
Can we officially kill Webpack now?
Let's not even like mention. It's like Voldemort in Harry Potter.
We were joking before the show started that I think Evan Yu will end up being known for Vite, and Vue will be just this other thing he created.
Yeah, I think it's just impressive how fast Pete is growing.
Yeah.
Like crazy fast. Yeah.
It's amazing how simple and like easy it is to use, how fast it is. It's just it makes so much sense. And there was so many things before it that like needed to happen.
I was gonna say it's also built on other things that came before it too, like Rollup and ES Build, but it's
Oh my
just
God.
so simple and amazing. It's an amazing tool.
I feel like who created Rollup? Do you remember? Wasn't
Rich Harris?
I forgot his name. He has a company called like Rom something. Let's see, let's look it up.
It wasn't the oh my gosh, Vercel guy Guillermo. Didn't he help with that too?
I don't know.
I'll let y'all play this game.
I'm trying to find out who's the inventor of Rollup. Now I'm concerned.
Are you really looking it up?
I'm not. I was joking.
Oh, it's Rich Harris. It really is Rich Harris. He was.
It was really?
Oh, it really is. Yeah, he was messing with me because I knew it was Rich Harris. Yeah.
She's got the gold earrings on. I mean, she's a fan.
I mean, I can tell you. Doesn't he work? Isn't he a core team member of Svelte?
He's the creator of Svelte.
There you go.
See, we're getting Pato like some more knowledge out there. That's good.
Yeah.
I think the only other big thing that I saw was the like testing updates and builds, but you had a whole slew of things, and you're gonna like show us something, right, Pato?
Yeah. So we took a lot about the few things that I already have in my slides, but we can actually jump into the code for us to understand more about signals. I think that'll be fun.
Sweet.
And some other things like the standalone API and things like that. So
I'm kind of excited to see this because I don't really know what Angular code looks like, and I know it's in my code base, and I can't figure out what it looks
not
like.
Pretty.
It's not pretty.
I loved Angular, and I still think it has its place. But after, I wrote Angular for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that, and then after I started writing React and Svelte, like the tooling that surrounds Angular, bar none, it's the best because they've had so much time to develop the CLI and like all the steps to it. I used to love like the modularized components, like all that stuff. But the simplicity to write a Svelte component, it's just so easy. Like it's straight up JavaScript. And
so let me ask you, that's a very interesting topic. So you don't use TypeScript with Vue?
I use TypeScript with Svelte and Next.js. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not familiar with Svelte.js at all. So if you want to create a component, you basically have to write it from scratch, right?
For the most part, there are some
like a CLI, like Angular.
There's no CLI that I know of. Britt, maybe you know of something.
I mean, there's UI toolkits you can use, like Skeleton or something like that, if you wanted to pull in components.
I think
is that what we're talking about?
It's more like you can do ng-c. It creates a component for you. So it's more of that tooling. And the hard part to make this comparison, Pato, is like there's so much that makes up an Angular component. If you want to make a Svelte component, you literally put a script tag in and you're done.
Are those snippets or are they like CLI tools?
They're straight CLI tools. There's like this whole like schema piece to it, and like the Angular.json file runs so much of like what's happening with schematics, and we could dive like down the Angular trail,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
the other
just so
piece,
much
though.
more complex. That's
That's
why.
what you were saying though, like you said, like you need that if you need all this boilerplate to do that. But
Yeah.
with Svelte, you don't really need the boilerplate, so you don't need to
Right.
create that.
So there are some like VS Code plugins and stuff that you can just, boom, and then it goes. But I don't know. It's kind of one of those tough things where they could probably make and there's probably one that exists, and I just don't know about it, that like Svelte create and it's gonna stub out a file and everything, but it's just not as complex as
Actions that will
Angular.
bring in like some of the things you need for like modals and some of that higher order JavaScript stuff you might want, but
The other interesting part too is like the switch from Angular, like having the at component styles and stuff now. It's really changed. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not bashing Angular. Like I have an Angular hat on. I have it.
I mean, I honestly work more with React than Angular, just because that's what the industry pulls me to do nowadays. But I enjoy writing Angular a lot. So
Yeah. Cool.
So let me share my screen. Da-da-da-da.
I always feel like when we're in these discussions about Angular, I always have to like defend it. I don't know why.
I'm trying to find my. I just lost my screen. I don't even know where.
He's working virtually. He's in the
I do
metaverse.
that all the time.
I'm in the metaverse. Okay. Here's the press.
I'm surprised no one's picked HoloLens yet. They probably don't want to drop the like, what is it, $5,000 or some ridiculous price for it.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Can you see where it says signals and why?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So basically, I'm just gonna be showing you all some examples. Hopefully, signals makes more sense now. So if you were writing just pure JavaScript code, right, and assuming that signals are supported with vanilla JS, on the left side, you're gonna see a super tiny example of calculating an addition, right? So as you can see, you have a variable x, y, and a z1. So, x equal to 6, y equal to 4. Alex, 6 plus 4?
10.
You got it, my man. You got it.
Don't ask me anything more challenging than that.
So if you see, if the value changes, if the value of x changes to 10, right, then some people might expect the total value to be 20. But since this is not reactive, and then the value of z is gonna remain as 10. This makes sense so far?
So far, so good.
Okay, Brittany, all good?
All good.
Awesome. So with signals, right, everything becomes reactive. So you have the signal, as you can see, you just literally type signal, the value, which in this case is 6, and then you have the signal, the value in this case is 4, and then you have a computed callback, which calls the value of x and y. You can see you have the x and you have the parentheses, right? And when you print that, it's going to give you 10. But what happens if the value of x changes, right? So I actually I actually did that wrong. But I was like definitely working this in my head. So the value of x is now 10, right? So 10 plus 4 is going to be 14. So z, which is the callback, is going to get a signal of x changing, and it's going to show the computed value, which in this case is going to be 14. Make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So let's see what
I
else.
think like for those who write Svelte, correct me on this one, Brittany, you write it probably more often than I do. That's like a derived store. So it's a store and a derived store in Svelte, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of how you would do that in Svelte. You would have to do like a store value or something outside of the component, but you could also do that with a reactive variable, just right in.
Yeah.
In a
So the
script.
$sign.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Awesome. So like I was telling before, what is a signal, right? The signal is a value with a change detection mechanism, a type of a variable that can hold a value, which in this case, the example that we saw, we were holding the value of 6 and 4. A signal is a reactive primitive, and a signal is not a replacement for RxJS and observable. So remember that. Let's see. When to use a signal? I think that's one of the most popular questions. Use a signal or a computed signal in a component for any state that could change, right? For example, the name of a person, the age, things like that. You can use them in directives as well. You can use signals in a service to share state across components. So instead of using sometimes an observable, if you don't want to be listening to that all the time, you can just be using a signal. What else? You can use them in a template to read signal values the same way that you are doing the curly brackets, right? And then let's say that you have a variable called name. You're gonna do something similar, but you're gonna call it name parentheses, and that is gonna invoke the signal and it's gonna give you the value back. And you can use them to track the local component state as well.
Is there any like async factor to that?
Signals are sync, and observables are async.
Okay, cool.
Just keep that in mind. So we were talking about Rx interoperability. I cannot even pronounce that thing. Can you do it, Alex?
Interoperability. I mumbled through it.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. So like I was telling you, you can actually change a signal to unobservable depending on your use case, right? So it's actually very simple. All you have to do is import the toObservable from the Angular core RxJS interop. And as you can see, we have the signal with a value of 0, and then you have the count and the dollar sign, which that's the Angular way of letting a developer know that you're working with an observable. And so yeah, all you have to do is use the toObservable and pass the this.count, and now you have an observable that you can subscribe to. So fairly simple. Now, what about converting an observable to a signal? So very similar as well. You're going to import the toSignal, and then you're going to have, let's say, an observable from a service, that's very common because you are making an HTTP request using the .get module, and now you can convert that from being an observable into a signal just by passing the observable inside of the parentheses of the toSignal method.
That's interesting. Yeah, and it's so, I think some of that stuff, do you mind going back one screen, Pato?
Of course.
So Brittany, this is some of the stuff that gets like really...
You see me shake my head?
Yeah, because...
It's the template for the list, the LI. I'm like...
Yeah, and I think the like injection of a data service too, like for new people that have only learned like JavaScript and not Angular, like those are some of the concepts that get like, I'll call it complicated. Once you understand them,
the service is doing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the difficulty, that those are the pieces that like take a long time to learn outside of like, you don't see this in React or Svelte or anywhere else. So
Brittany, are you familiar with React or only with Svelte?
I mean, yeah, I learned React back when it was like class-based components. So this syntax looks familiar to me, but I don't like it at all.
She doesn't like RxJS.
That's fine. So
she doesn't like JSX either, though, Pato. So
JSX, yeah. You said RxJS. I was like, RxJS just
didn't
make sense to me. Like the observables kind of blew my mind a little bit when we did the marbles example before. But
the marbles, yeah.
Yeah, JSX syntax is a little, I don't love it.
So one thing like I think stopped Angular to having a lot of adoption at the beginning was the concept of observables and RxJS. Because you were not only learning a new framework, you had to learn RxJS, TypeScript, and Angular, the whole Angular framework, right? So I think those three things were a gatekeeper.
Yeah, big barrier. Yeah.
Get
It's a
more
lot of
adopted.
overhead.
Yeah, but now everybody uses TypeScript, and now the Angular developers have like 8 years of TypeScript experience, right? But I feel like RxJS didn't become as adopted as it could have. There's only a few people that I know that use RxJS instead of React applications, but I barely know only like
I love RxJS, and I would use it everywhere if there wasn't simpler solutions, I guess. There's just so much, like, if I could make every application I wrote as observable as I can with RxJS, it's a no-brainer for me.
What is an alternative? What do we use as an alternative to that?
Probably stores are going to be the closest thing to it, but there's a lot of functions.
Like a way to share data
manually
across an
write.
application? Is that what it does?
Yeah, in an observable manner, though. So, like, if you have 10 data streams coming in and you wanted to wait for them, or like wait for the first complete, or like there's all of these different methods that are already written in RxJS that if you weren't using it, you'd almost have to write them manually or
It's about
use
the
like
flow of time, kind of, right?
Say that again, sorry.
Like the flow of time in the observables, right? Like how you want it to flow in the specific order.
Yeah, and how composable they get and like pull each together. I think I've heard of it like called streams before is probably the best way. Kind of flowing together of data. So I don't know. I've tried to make so many analogies. The marbles thing is always the weirdest for me, but everyone always uses it. I do like the streams of like merging and things like that a little bit.
That kind of made more sense to me than it did before. So I kind of get it now. If you want certain
you could easily use RxJS in Svelte or React or anything.
It's agnostic, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's even Rx Java.
That's right.
That blew my mind, and it's basically the same concept just for like Java devs. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I use RxFire a lot in different applications when using it with Firebase. So because of like that real-time observability piece, it becomes like really important. Same with like when we were writing AppWrite apps. If you saw a trigger come across, it was easier just to throw that into an observable right away. So
I guess I can't think of a good use case where it would be necessary for me to wait on a specific piece of data before another piece of data, and I would just call that data before the other piece of data.
Yeah, and if you're kind of like server side, like that side of things, or like building a blog, it really doesn't make that much sense. When we start talking like real time, you want financial ticker, right? Like a stock ticker coming in.
Yeah, like real time data. I guess.
Yeah, like that's where it becomes much more important.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Sorry.
Keep going. Oh, good. No, this is the fun part, right? Talking and discussing and learning. Yeah. So we were talking about hydration earlier, so I'm just gonna skip this part and just mention a little bit of what's happening with the hydration and server-side rendering. So one cool thing is that now you don't really have the flicking for the end users. You know, like sometimes when you were like loading an Angular app, you will see like something flashing and you were like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that the hydration and the new changes are helping to avoid that. Like I was telling you, is bettering some of the web core vitals in certain scenarios. It's easy integration with existing apps. And as you can see on the right side, all you have to do is, as part of the Angular platform browser, you're going to import provide client hydration, and you're going to inject it in the providers. And there you go. You're ready to go to use hydration in Angular. So it's like fairly simple. So I think that's really cool. And then we talk a little bit about the tooling, right? So let's dive deep into that. So the standalone API, right? So now, you know, the standalone APIs are new. So now you don't have to have the ng modules. You can basically, if you have an application that is using components with modules, you can, migrate by using the ng generate at Angular core standalone, and it's gonna do the migration for you, which is super nice because you don't have to do it by hand.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's something I really like about Angular. They try to optimize the developer experience when it comes to updating things. They even have the ng update command in the CLI, which is like super nice. What else? And yes, so what happens if you want to start a brand new application with standalone components? So basically, all you have to do is type ng new, which that is the command letting the CLI know that you're creating a new Angular application, and you're gonna pass the flag dash dash standalone. So now every component that you create using the CLI is gonna be an standalone component. If you don't use the flag, it's just gonna be a regular component with the module.
Do you find a lot of people are using standalone already or no?
Yeah, people like it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So configure the Zone.js. So what is Zone.js? Like I was telling you all before, Zone.js is basically the mechanism that makes us have the change detection inside of Angular. A lot of developers don't like it, and people have struggled with it for a long time. I think that's one of the cool reasons why people decided to adopt now signals into their applications. So, so like I was telling you all, you can configure Zone.js, and they can do this in the Bootstrap API. And all they have to do is pass a provide zone change detection, and then they can pass, for example, true or false, depending on your needs. Turn it off or turn it on. That is up to you. Advancing developer tooling. So, like we were talking about, actually I was wrong. Remember that I said 45% that people saw the increase on their performance. So some people have seen, I'm sorry, that was on the hydration. No, I'm getting confused. So, whenever you start an Angular application, it usually takes like some time to basically warm up, right? I think about it as a car, right? Whenever you do ng-serve, it takes a few seconds to compile and basically show your application. Well, thanks to the ES build, now people are seeing improvements of 72% in code production builds, which I think is super cool. Like we mentioned before, we're using ng-serve with Vite now. I'm sorry. And ES build is now used for your dev and prod builds. And as you can see, if you go to the angular.json, you're going to see the builder, and it's going to say Angular Dev Kit, and then the browser ES build. So far, so good.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thank you, Evan. You and the massive team around it. I shouldn't just say Evan.
Is it at the strange 5173 localhost?
Oh, that's a great question. Did they change the port for ng-serve?
Have any of you have used Jest before?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Jest is super nice. I feel like it's one of the easiest testing frameworks out there for unit testing. Back in the days, Angular had Karma. So now, well, actually, it has Karma already, but now you can use Jest. And I think this is another change that is helping the developer experience a lot. And I feel this is going to help a lot of the adoption of people who are coming from a different background or framework to get started with Angular as well, because unit testing is very important. And if you're familiar already with the testing tool, then it's something that you don't have to relearn. So how do we use Jest inside of our Angular application? Very simple. All you have to do is npm install Jest, and then --save dev. And in your angular.json file, you see where it says test, and then it says builder right here. You're gonna change this line. Instead of saying Karma right here, you're gonna change it for Jest, and that's all.
So it doesn't come by default. This is just something
it
that
also,
you can...
yeah, it's optional. Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I think they're gonna make it default. in future releases though.
Interesting.
It's interesting they have the polyfills for Zone.js in there still.
And then something cool in the Angular world, I feel like now every framework has the concept of inputs or props, right? I haven't played with Svelte, but I'm pretty sure they have something similar to that. I don't know how they call it. How do they call it in Svelte, Brittany? Do they call it props?
For props, yeah.
Okay, they call it props. Also awesome. So in React, they call it props. In Angular world, they call it inputs. So now you can actually make them required, which is super nice, and that's gonna help you to have more safety around the application that you write. So so like I said, make your input required. All you have to do is type at input, and then required true, and then the name of your input value. That's it. Super simple.
I'm curious. I always forget the difference between directives and inputs. It's been so long now.
So directives are mainly to, well, not mainly, but one of the examples is to like do like how you say, like manipulation with the DOM sometimes. For example, you can even like use a directive to highlight text using Angular, right? And change the color.
Okay,
The
that's right.
input is basically the value that is coming from a different component, from a parent component into the child component.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so think of it as a prop. Yeah, just a prop, the same concept as React. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Passing router data as component inputs. So now, let's say if you have a piece of code that says, you have a page called about. Now you can pass data in the path parameters, query parameters, or the route data, and then as an input value. And then every time that you visit that specific page, then the value of the query, the path, or the router data is going to be injected into the input, which is very nice as well.
That is nice.
And then flexible ng on destroy. Do you remember writing ng on destroy at some point, Alex?
Yeah, unfortunately.
So they're trying to make your life easier. And basically, the on destroy is injectable, which enables the flexibility for the developers that they have been asking for. As you can see, we're using inject. And just to give a little bit of context, back in the days, you had to do dependency injection in the constructor with a service. I don't know if you remember that. So now you don't even need to do the whole constructor thing for dependency injection. You can just use inject. And then when this component is destroying, you can call the destroy, and then do the destroy of the thing that you're injecting, which in this case is the destroy ref from the Angular core.
That's cool.
Self-closing tags.
This one's so silly.
Something super simple, and I decided to do a cat example because I'm assuming that you love cats, and so do I. So basically, you have back in the days, you had this component called my cat component, and then you're passing, let's say, the name or whatever, and then you have to have the other tag, right? And I'm like, why can I just have one like we do in React? So now you're able to do this.
So the interesting part is, I hope they will get to the point where on the name, the input output, so the parentheses are output, right, and brackets are inputs. I hope that they can one day get to the point where, like, if you have a variable that is the same name, you won't have to put that in twice, like we've seen with like React for years.
Oh yeah, that you
That's
just put it
something
once.
Svelte doesn't do, which is awesome.
So FYI, in this case, it should be name without brackets. I didn't like really.
It's all good.
This, but FYI. What else we got? We got some resources here, but why don't we jump into some actual code? Something super simple for everybody to understand how things are working. So this example is based from 2 places. One is a blog post that you were talking about from Minko, and another one is a code example from Deborah Kurata, which is, by the way, amazing at explaining RxJS. She has this awesome course on Plural site. So shout out to Deborah. So right here, we have these signals called first name, last name, and one has the value of Alex. By the way, that's my dad's and my brother's name. That's actually very
It's a
funny.
great name. Great
Yeah,
people.
great name. Yeah. And then the last name is Vargas, which it happens to be my last name. And then we have this computed callback, which is gonna basically merge the first name and the last name, right? And then you have an effect, right? Which this makes me feel that I'm writing React with the use effect hook.
Yep.
And basically an effect is side effect. When a computation happens, something changes, then something's going to happen because of the action that you just made, right? Which in this case is changing the name. So how does this look on the HTML side? All I have is something showing the full name, calling getting the value, and I have a button that has a click, set name, and then just passing the new value that I want for my signal, and then we're gonna see things getting updated. So why don't we go to the website? It's gonna type local host 4200, and then I have.
I thought they did. I was gonna say it's
I think they
5173.
kept their port.
Now I have this enterprise ready massive web application, as you can see.
It looks great.
And all that's going to happen is if I click inspect, then go to console, then I'm going to click on click, and then I see the value Pato Vargas, right? Because we have changed the value of my first name signal. And because of that, we had a side effect, and the side effect in this case is just printing something to the console.
If you
Right.
click again, does it know enough not to update?
Yeah, you see?
Nice.
Because the value hasn't changed.
Yep. Cool.
Which is really cool, which means is reducing the number of computations, which means your application is going to be more performant. Great question, Alex. I'm glad you're paying attention to class today.
I try.
Yeah. And then what else? As I showed you before, now you don't have to have this other tag on the side, so we can just like save it, and then I can see my other component right here. So we want to make sure that it's working. Now I have this other component of shopping cart.
How can Angular do lowercase component names?
I can't remember if they tap into the native element or not.
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah.
Because like those are reserved for web like Shadow DOM components and
Right.
native HTML components. I thought that's weird.
There's something with that. When they release their native elements,
see, maybe,
that was a thing.
So this is what it does.
Yeah, it won't spit them out that way. It compiles them into something else.
Yeah. So this is what it compiles to.
That's just in dev mode.
Yeah. Well, like you write it that way. It's kind of like Svelte. Like when you write a component in uppercase, it actually compiles out to a JavaScript thing that looks like a mess.
And then, so let's actually take a look to a little bit more complex example using signals for a shopping cart. So if we
this was also, we could buy some stuff from you, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just buy me like a t-shirt or something. Yeah. So awesome. So if we go to the shopping cart component, right? As you can see, it looks a little bit scary just because I have written more things, but nothing complex. I have the quantity, which in this case is gonna default to 1. And then quantity available, you have from 1 to 6, meaning the quantity of clothes that you can buy. And then you have the signal, which is basically part of the interface clothes, is using that. And I have the ID, and then the name is just gonna be a shirt and the price of 10, nothing crazy. And you have this callback for doing the computation of how many t-shirts you have selected, and it's gonna multiply that for the price. And another thing that we want to listen to with our signals is the total price. That way we can change the color of one of our labels that I'm gonna show you. So if we go here, right, you can select one, right? And as you can see, some signals are getting triggered. For example, in this case right now that I click one, I have the side effect going to one. And then if I change to 3, once again, this effect gets called. But what happens if I click 4? So because I'm using signals, the signal called color is gonna know the computation, and it's gonna see if the value from the price is bigger than 30. And if it's bigger than 30, I'm gonna change the color of my label to green. Otherwise, I'm gonna change it to black. So far, so good?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna click on 5, which is gonna be 50, and we can see that that now my value, it's in color green because it's over 50. What happens if I change it back? What do you think is gonna happen, Brittany, if I change it to number 2? So 2 t-shirts that I want to buy.
It's going to change back to black.
There you go. Perfect.
I
Why?
was
Because
gonna
we
say
are
red.
having a very reactive application using Signal. So we're updating our template as our application changes. So yeah, that's basically what's going on with signals. What else I want to show you? Oh yeah, we can do.
I think honestly, I think this is a really good representation. We're kind of running up on time here. What we might do instead is just jump over to perfect pics.
Okay.
Thank you for the example. That was awesome.
No problem. No problem.
So I'm going to put you on the spot since you've been talking so long. Tell us about your perfect pic.
Yeah. So I love building communities. And basically, this is gonna sound maybe kind of funny, but I love to interact with people. I love dancing, and I like to party. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything. I love dancing. So I actually have a nightclub in Tulum. And so I decided to bring the same idea to New York City, and I decided to create a community with people who live here in New York City. And I had a party a month ago, and 100 people showed up to my apartment, and it was amazing. People had an amazing vibe. Everybody was super respectful.
You must have a massive apartment.
Well, it was in a rooftop. The problem is that people kept telling me, dude, you have to throw another one. And from 100 people, and now we have 561 attendees.
Wow.
So
Holy crap.
obviously, this doesn't, this is not scalable to have a party like this in my apartment. So I went to a bar here in New York City, to a rooftop, and I basically pitched them the idea, and they let me have the venue for free.
Yeah.
So now
bring us those drinks.
Yeah, now I'm gonna have like 500 people, as many as they showed up, and the point is for them to get along, and hopefully they make a meaningful connection, and maybe one day they network, and hopefully they have fun and they dance and do some cardio. Yeah.
This Saturday. Awesome. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's like my little baby. Yeah. I just like that's something that is related to my DevRel job. I love helping people. I love building communities, and I love giving experiences to people. Right? If I can create an experience and have someone smiling from a good memory, that makes me really happy.
That's really cool. Love it.
It's really awesome.
Brittany, your pick.
Yeah, my pick just happened yesterday, so can
weird
fit.
freeze frame. Sorry.
It's kind of a weird freeze frame. But Config Keynote was yesterday, and so I just kind of picked the whole keynote because they released so many amazing things in this. And I'll kind of go through the list quickly if I can remember all of them. But auto layout has wrap now. We have dev mode in Figma. We have, goodness, I'm not going to be able to remember all of them. What are the other big features?
Dev mode was pretty big when I saw it.
Dev mode was huge. There's another really big one. They released VS Code extensions. We are able to do RIM. They released open source plugins where you can do like React code and you can use props, variables. That was the other big one. So it's like design tokens, but they're variables where you can have props instead of like the actual names.
That's cool.
You release like dev handoff designs. So it's so many good things. Yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, really
I
impressive.
might have to, hopefully Fireship releases like 100 seconds of, so I can check all that
Yeah,
out.
it was a pretty long one, but it was worth it. It was a good watch.
That's cool. Love it.
I think you might have missed my other one too. I threw the Svelte 4 release in there later, and there's a blog post on it too. I just put in the private chat.
Cool. We'll add that in. As you know, I've been kind of looking for my next job, and there's this new VC-based startup in Grand Rapids I just heard about called Ticker. Pretty amazing story behind this one. So you can attach all of the different accounts that you have, like shareholder or stocks in, and what you get is the perks for those stocks that you wouldn't necessarily like know about. So like I just checked out the site and I put in, I connected it to my Robinhood. I don't know if I connected to Edward Jones or not, but whatever, it doesn't matter. When I put it in there though, like I immediately got $11 Amazon gift card. I started checking out different, because I own X amount of, I can't remember what it was now. I got another gift card, and it's all just these companies already offer these things. You just really don't pay attention to them because you're more concerned with like the stock price going up, not necessarily these like perks that they're giving away. So it's really cool. Like I would definitely suggest checking it out. I think they have a ways to grow yet. And if you're looking for a job,
So Grand Rapids company?
yeah, it's Grand Rapids based. So
interesting.
I haven't heard back, so I don't know if I'll make it in time for a decision on that one. I wanted to pick Pato's site as well. Like,
oh my God, dude, you've been creeping hard.
I really like, these are the little things that I want to put on CodingCat, like cats floating around.
So
And, like it's just so much fun to have this stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen that website in like 3 years. That's so funny.
That's amazing.
I think it might have been connected on your GDE account. I don't remember, but I love it. It's really neat. So
it was super fun to build that website. I forgot that. Good memories. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on and breaking down Angular 16 for us and bringing us back into the Angular world. We rarely talk about it, so it's awesome to see.
Brittany, Alex, thank you so much for the invite. That was like super fun. Hopefully I get to meet you in person, Brittany. I already met Alex, and hopefully I run into you, Alex, one more time. Or
yes,
that would be amazing.
Soon.
Thanks for coming.
Take it easy. All right.
Bye.